Why not take your cinnamon roll up a notch? Let's make this giant cinnamon roll that is great as a gift or just as a cake or even just to eat as yourself if you really want the calories. Here are your ingredients, but don't worry, there'll be a link below that will give you all the nutrition information and details as usual. Begin by melting your butter and your milk together, and you don't want it too hot. You want it just lukewarm. 1 cup or 240 milliliters and 2 tablespoons of butter or margarine or 28 grams. You want to do this on a very low heat, and you're just going to melt it until it just combines. And then you're going to take it off the heat and you're going to add in your yeast. Theoretically, you should be able to put your knuckle in it and not get burned, but don't do that if you're new to baking. You want to put in 1 teaspoon of yeast, 3.5 grams, and let it sit for a while. If it's too hot, don't put the yeast in right away. To this yeast mixture, we're going to add in 1 egg, 50 grams. Next, you're going to add in 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 2.5 grams, 2 tablespoons of sugar, 25 grams, that helps with browning. And then finally, you're going to add in your flour, 1 3/4 cup or 263 grams. Mix it together either with your hand or the back of your spoon, or you can put this in a mixer, a stand mixer, for 10 minutes or until it's elastic. You want to then gather it up into a ball. This is going to be a very sticky dough, and if you need more help with that, I'll give you a link below that will tell you more about working with sticky dough, but just bear with me here. At first it's going to be incredibly sticky and you're going to get it all over your hands and you're going to think it'll never come together. Just work with it for 4 minutes. If after 4 minutes you can't get this into a good shape, then I tell you go ahead, add some flour. But just, you're going to do just this basic motion, and after a while you will see that it just starts to turn into a nice supple dough that you can work with a lot easier. And the reason why you want a stickier dough is it just makes it a very pleasant, light tasting cinnamon roll. It won't be tough and it will be just melt in your mouth good. So I do encourage you to try to do this just like I'm showing you, and try not to add that flour in. But again, after 4 minutes, if you're still struggling, add in a tablespoon of flour, work a minute, and then go ahead and change over. As you can see, it's stopping sticking to my hands, and now about the 4 minute mark, I can actually just roll it around. You want to do this until it's nice and soft and elastic. It should stretch really easy like this without tearing easily, and that's when you know you're done. You put it back in your bowl and you cover it and you let it rest. And you want this to rise at least double roughly, or until when you press in it, it doesn't collapse or doesn't immediately bounce back. This takes anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours depending on the temperature of your house or the temperature of the dough. This took me about 60 minutes because it's very warm in my house. But typically it takes 90 to 2 hours. So don't fret if it just sits there for the first 60 minutes and does nothing before it starts to rise. Next, you're going to press this into a rectangle. You can use your hands for this, or I recommend using a rolling pin. You want 10 by 15 inch rectangle or 25 by 38 centimeter rectangle. Now, if you don't have a rolling pin, you can use a glass and just use that as rolling. I used a bottle for years before I got a rolling pin. And you can pick it up every once in a while and let it stretch back into the shape it wants to be. That just helps it keep its shape whenever you go to roll it. And we will come back and show you what it looks like once you're done. And it doesn't have to be a perfect rectangle. As you can see, there's some parts that are a little bit not square. It's not necessary to have this factory machine made. If it was perfect, it would be done by a factory. Next, we're going to put on some softened butter or margarine, 2 tablespoons, 28 grams. Trust me, you don't need more than this. If you put too much butter or margarine, you start to get too much separation in between your layers, and it can just ooze out at the bottom as you're baking it, and it's just disgusting. After you get that spread out, add in a 1/2 cup of brown sugar, 113 grams, 1 tablespoon of cinnamon, 12 grams, and 1 tablespoon of flour, 9 grams. The flour helps this all stick together and keep it from just spreading out at the bottom. If you've ever made cinnamon rolls and all the stuff just goes away and gets all over your pan, that's why. Use some flour next time, any cinnamon roll mixture you're making. You want to sprinkle this out on one edge. You want to leave a about a half an inch or a 1.25 centimeter gap so that it's easier to roll. And you want to do that on one of the skinny ends. I use the rolling pin to just press this down into the dough. It makes it easier to roll up and all the sugar mixture doesn't just come flying out. You can also use your hands. You're going to need a baking tray, and if it's not non-stick, you want to line it because this will stick to the pan. You can also grease it if you don't want to use paper. Now you just want to cut these in 2-inch strips or 5 centimeters. If you wanted to, you could make them really pretty and square off the edges, but I don't like to waste anything because this tastes absolutely wonderful. It'll just affect the presentation somewhat, and I'll show you what I mean in a little bit. And if you want, you can go ahead and take that ruler over to the other side and make marks on that side to make it a little more easy to square it up. You can use anything to cut it with. I find a pizza cutter to be the easiest way to cut the dough. The reason why I like to use a pizza cutter over a knife is because it doesn't snag on the dough like a knife can at times, especially if your knife is slightly dull, which you should always have sharp knives in the kitchen. And also, you're less likely to get cut on a pizza cutter. I just find it's a lot safer to use when you have issues with your hands or your shoulders. It's just a safer way to bake. Next, you're just going to roll these up one on top of the other. I'll just show you with the very first couple, and then we'll come back and show you how to finish proving this and what to do next. Please forgive the glare that shows up in just a few moments. I baked this all day. It takes roughly about 4 to 5 hours to make this, and just at the time of day there was a little bit of a glare and I did not realize it until after making this, and it was just so delicious. I wanted to share with you anyway. Now when you get to the second row, overlap slightly and then just keep rolling. The reason why you want to overlap slightly is if you don't overlap slightly, when it rises, it'll pull apart and it will tend to fall down instead of actually keeping that roll shape. At the end, it should look like this. And then at the very end, if you're having trouble having this adhere, take your finger, get a little damp with some water, and then stick it to the side of the dough, and it should hold its shape at that point. Once you have it finished rolling up, you're going to put it on your baking tray and you're going to let it rise for 60 minutes. After 45 minutes, go ahead and turn on that oven to 350 or 180°C because you want your oven fully preheated, and cover this with some plastic wrap or plastic wrap and a towel while it is rising. You don't want that dough to dry out and form a skin. Once you have this nicely risen, and isn't it absolutely beautiful? See how the overlaps have kept it together? That's what you want. And say hi, Maggie. Put this in the oven 20 to 30 minutes or until the internal temperature reads 190 degrees Fahrenheit or 88 degrees Celsius if you're checking it with a thermometer. And then you're just going to let it cool completely before you ice it. Now you can serve this warm. If you want to serve it warm, just let it cool 5 to 10 minutes before adding that icing, or it will just melt off everywhere. So now let's make some icing. 1 cup of powdered sugar, 125 grams, and to that add in 2 to 3 tablespoons of milk, 30 to 45 milliliters, adding a tablespoon at a time until you get the consistency you like. I like the full amount. I like it to be nice and runny like this because you can use less icing that way. Again, if you want, make this your own. Double it if you really like icing. Use less if you don't, or don't even use icing at all. A lot of times I just dust it with powdered sugar and some cinnamon on top, and it's absolutely wonderful. Drizzle it like this, or you could even completely cover it. Remember, this is your cinnamon roll. Make it any way you like. Add in some chocolate if you like. Put on some nuts in the center. Do whatever makes you happy. I have found you become a better baker as you experiment and try new flavors. I hope you enjoyed this recipe. Visit us at jacksonsjob.com for more, and as always, happy baking.